Well, as we were hearing a little earlier, Nine unveiling its 2013 program lineup this week and promising ad buyers it can deliver at least a 5% rise in key ratings demographics next year. Let's return to our co-host James Manning from Mediaweek. James, you're actually speaking to media buyers who were there at the launch.
Yeah, I talked to Andrew Lamb. He's been on the show before. He's the managing director of one of the biggest independent sort of buying outfits, TMS, and we started off asking him what he thought about that discount.
It was a surprise. It's unusual. I mean, obviously those guarantees go on as an agency by agency or a client by client basis, but I don't think I've ever, in my 20-odd years in the industry, I don't think I've ever seen a public vote of confidence like that. And if they were, trying to actually get confidence into the marketplace, I think they did a pretty good job.
I guess it would be a bit of a conversation starter, wouldn't it, for your sort of client gatherings? How far are we into negotiations? Has a lot of the deals already been done for next year?
I'm sure some agencies are well down that path, but honestly, it just depends on the agency makeup, whether they do agency-centric deals or whether they do client-by-client deals. From our perspective, some have started, none have finished. We wanted to see, obviously, what these guys have on the table before even commencing that, but yeah, they definitely have commenced.
No surprises that we're seeing more of the proven performers coming back. Things like The Voice, getting a lot more of the block, a lot more Test cricket next year with 2 Ashes series, which has got to be good news, you'd think, for ratings.
Yep.
From what you've seen there, do you think they'd have any trouble getting that 5% bump?
I think it's always going to be hard when you're coming off the back of an Olympic year, and obviously London was very successful for the network. Look, the worst case scenario is if they don't get the 5%, then there's always going to be compensation that are built into those deals, so advertisers aren't sort of left short.
Yeah, I guess it'd be important to see the fine print on that 5% deal, wouldn't it, if it includes the Olympic weeks year on year, or if not.
My guess is they'll probably extract that, but anyway, we'll see.
From what you saw, what were the programming highlights, do you think, from, wasn't a lot of new stuff, was there?
No, and I think I'd be pretty surprised if I actually did see a whole new suite of programs, and obviously there's some good new local content there, some stuff from the US, but, when they had such a successful year with The Voice, The Block, and a few other franchises, obviously they've done the right thing and actually extended those series out for this year. So if I came in expecting to see a lot of new surprises, I think that, it'd be silly to actually think they're going to move the deck chairs on something that was proved to be such a great year for them this year.
Nine's going very hard on food programming in 2013, but a little bit late to the party, although we're there probably before that sort of sector really took off.
Yeah.
Do you think that could go well, or could we be oversaturated with cooking shows?
I don't know. Food's everyone likes to cook, don't they? And if you ever look at some of the other franchises on some of the other networks, like MasterChef's been running for 7 or 8 years now. It's still doing pretty well. So I think the people's, pardon the pun, appetite for food is probably still there. The other thing that'd be interesting to see is how they actually tap Bauer Media into that as well, because obviously they've got some pretty strong food titles in their suite of magazines as well.
Could Nine have a crack at going #1 all people next year?
I'm sure they'll have a crack at it. It's going to be hard. I don't think they're focusing on that. I think they're focusing on the key demos, and obviously that's where the revenue lies. After seeing Seven's line up, they've got a very strong year again, so I'm not going to be a betting man. I think it'll be a pretty close race. But from today's event, it doesn't sound like they're after the overall #1 position. It sounds like they're after the overall #1 position in the key demographics.
Do you think the ad share seems to sort of increase? It's a bit retrospective, isn't it? It'll go up next year, but on their performance this year, do you think they'll edge closer to 7? I think there's about 40% to 35% at the moment. I think that gap would close?
I suspect the gap will close, yeah. I mean, look, if I had to be, if I had to put my money on it, even though I just said I wouldn't, I suspect that 7 will probably come out as #1 overall, but I suspect these guys, with the guarantee that they've made and the suite of program they've got, will do as well, if not better, in the key demographics. But overall, you'd expect the gap to maybe close maybe 1 or 2%.
Really interesting. And James, you just had some more about the
5% guarantee. It won't include those Olympic weeks, so they'll take that out of it, and it will be sort of cumulative, so it'll be across the year. Won't be if there's one quarter where they're not up for 5%. They won't be make goods there. It'll be sort of stretched out across the whole year.
Still pretty optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Very brave.
Great stuff. All right, let's just turn to the News Limited CEO Kim Williams, warning again on the dangers of more regulation for the media this week in a speech to the Melbourne Press Club. He also called for greater optimism among media professionals.
Have a go, because there's plenty of energetic life in the media industry yet. In fact, I would say there's much more cause for hope than for pessimism. Journalism of the future is going to be different, but it is still recognisably going to be journalism. And it's going to create jobs for those who approach it with a positive attitude and are prepared to make a place for themselves in it. Why do I say this? Well, for one very simple reason. My reading of what's going on is that the digital world is massively increasing the world's demand for words and images that make sense of our world. The good news is journalists and media proprietors are in precisely this business. There's a lot of despair about the impact of technology, especially iPads and the like, on journalism. For me, despite the regrettable short-term pain, it's actually a reason for very real optimism. I say, look at it positively. Consumption is up, and up dramatically.
James, so obviously calling for optimism there, but also again, of course, warning against the dangers of more media regulation too.
Two things that look like coming out of that. The News Media Council, you know, Kim Williams is against that, and I think he'll have sort of support across his colleagues at other companies. And the public interest test, he says, look, he can't see how that will work. So yeah, two things he's very adamant against being introduced, and looks like it's going to be delayed anyway, it seems.
Because there's been a lot of reports about the sort of, you know, different options that the government might come out with in their response. But what's your understanding that Cabinet can't actually agree on the response yet? Yeah,
you know, and it's just people worried about coming out and then having this big campaign, the media against the government. We're into next year, an election year, so you know it's not a good time to be going up against the combined forces of the media. So I think this could be a long time before we see some outcome here, unless it's watered down significantly. And it's just, you know, the best way forward is probably it'll go behind closed doors, get into negotiation, lobbying till all the parties come to closer to agreement before it's unveiled to the public, I guess.
Okay. We've just been watching Ten's shares. They're up something like 6% as we go to air. I just want to ask you, because there have been a lot of reports that the government is close to extending those licence fee rebates for the commercial TV networks. What do you see here?
Again, look, it's off a very low base, variety of those 10 shares. So, you know, they're still trading well under probably what they're worth. We talked to Jeff Brown on Tuesday. He told me on Monday he went to work out at 9. Before the end of the day, he didn't know he was going. He was down in Canberra in the Prime Minister's office making some negotiations. He wouldn't tell us what it was about, but he's also the chairman of Free TV Australia. So I think that was probably to do with some of those negotiations about those licence rebates.
All right, so we'll wait for that one. Now, of course, I guess just talking about regulation in the UK, the Leveson inquiry recommendations are to be handed down tonight, and the British Prime Minister has been promising that there is going to be change for media regulation.
Yeah, absolutely, and he seems to be indicating that, look, he's against proposals from the industry that they self-regulate, so there will be an introduction of a body with significant powers, if you like, at arm's length from the media.
I just want to ask you, because obviously there's been a lot of press about the stoush between Qantas and the Tourism Australia chair, Jeff Dixon. Is this going to have any impact on ad spend, on the media industry?
Well, the media will be certainly hoping not. I mean, they're significant spenders. The last financial year just finished, about $4 million they spent on media advertising Australian tourism, up significantly from about 2.8 according to sort of Nielsen estimates. So the media will be hoping that it's not in jeopardy, but I don't think so. Look, they've got the funds there. Without the Qantas deal, if you like, it's going to make it even more important how to spend that money. So I think that'll still should be pretty safe, you'd hope.
Okay. Also, just interesting, we saw ABC close down the Hobart division, and there's going to be a Senate committee investigation now into that and claims of centralisation by the ABC.
Yeah, it was. They made collectors down there when that show was stopped. That became, I think, Auction Room, and you know, the ABC saying, look, we don't really need those programs anymore, so we'll close down that little production facility we had. I think there's a good argument, perhaps, that the ABC of all people should, you know, spread out into all those markets. But on the other hand, they do have significant radio, you know, investment down there, so you know it's not as if they ignore that state completely.
News Limited has confirmed Fiorella DeSanto has been appointed head of sales.
Yeah, as we sort of guessed last week that she'd be taking over from Tony Kendall, and that'll that's the case.
And another appointment, Mark Robinson, chief football writer at Herald Sun.
Yeah, taking over from Mike Sheehan. Sort of been taken them a year to make that appointment. Mike Sheehan stepped down about this time last year. Sort of people within news were saying, look, we don't really need a chief football writer. Some jostling within the ranks for that position. Also chat that during that time some overtures were made to Caroline Wilson, the chief football writer at The Age, to move across to news. Nothing became of that, so they've finally gone with Mark, a busy guy. You know, he hosts 4 nights a week on the Fox Footy channel, does a lot of radio work, so I'm not sure how he's going to fit it all in.
Fairfax, of course, we've been talking about this for a while, but it's understood there's been reports, media buyers have been getting a glimpse of what the new compact editions of The Age and Sydney Morning Herald are going to be looking like. When are we going to get them?
Yeah,
when are
they
they
have
going to go on
indeed. Yeah,
sale?
we think it'll be first quarter next year. I think it'll be February, maybe earlier. They might jump a little bit earlier to maybe try and catch some people off guard, if you like. The big debate at the moment, I think, is around charging for those broadsheet pages. Can they get the same money off a compact page as they're currently getting off a broadsheet page? But there's not an actual lot of broadsheet pages available, because most of those newspapers are already in compact sections, all the other parts of the newspaper. So it's just sort of debating over the dollars they can get off that sort of early news section of the paper.
Radio ratings end this week for the year. Interesting, Darren Hinch last 3AW Drive show, and then also in the industry we've been hearing about Hamish and Andy signing a new deal.
Yeah, Hamish and Andy back, actually going 5 days a week again, which is sort of interesting. They were just Friday nights. That night show's moving to Mondays, and they'll be back daily with an hour program.
All right, sorry to make it so quick, James. Thank you so much as always. James Manning there from Mediaweek. From the team here, thanks for your company.